Hello and welcome to The Birth of a New Dimension. My name is Aurora and I will be your host for this next hour as we explore topics of consciousness and higher dimensional reality. So I have named this show Birth of a New Dimension, not only in reference to a visual piece of artwork that I've created that depicts the ongoing events that we are currently enmeshed within, but also in order to accurately portray the intent of the information that I share here. So the information here is meant to broaden consciousness and prepare the ground for the planting of seeds that will eventually grow into this fruition of actual contact with otherworldly beings. So I've just returned back inside from my studio. I have charged up what I call my solar batteries, and this is what I do through sun gazing. It is part of my physical and non-physical energetic hygiene, and it is part of my creative process. So in order to share these ideas here through the flapping of my moving mouth parts, first it is necessary for me to ingest these ideas as abstractions. In the same way that if you want to run a marathon, first it is necessary to ingest lots of calories and glucose as caloric intake, because that will then become manifested as kinetic energy as you actually run. So my creative process has to do with sun gazing. This is the physical action of aligning my forehead with the sun, the actual sun in the sky, but not necessarily my physical eyes. You can do this with your physical eyes closed or with a brim of a hat shading your physical eyes. And the key is to align your non-physical third eye with the sun and ingest pure energy through that alignment. And the pure energy at times has felt like the sensation of food or nourishment, almost to the point of feeling like my mouth was full of pudding and like I needed to swallow, and at other times having an actual taste in my mouth. And also the feeling of being energetically nourished and filled with new ideas and new, I can just only use the word creative energy. There's no synonym for that. So I practice this on a daily basis. Even when it is the dead of winter, even when I lived in upstate New York, where there was very little sunlight in winter, I would schedule in the time that I knew the sun would be visible coming in through my window, and I would sit there and I would align my third eye with the sun. And now that I live here in sunny California, it's one of the reasons why I made that relocation, so that I could more easily physically interact with the emanations of the sun, because of course we're always interacting with those emanations even at night. Even when Earth has turned her face away from the sun, we are still always constantly being bathed in the ideas and the radiation and all of the nourishment that comes from the sun. So it's very true that you can get beyond the literalism of line of sight. Line of sight is what is the term for satellite communications, when you can only receive a signal when there is a direct line that could be drawn between yourself and that which is broadcasting. And of course, if you have a giant planet in between you and that which is broadcasting, you wouldn't have that direct connection. So, but that is not true in terms of receiving solar information. You do not have to be so literal. You can definitely be sitting at night or sitting on a cloudy day, and you can still receive the same consciousness energy. Even though your skin might not actually turn brown, that is the physiological response to being exposed to solar radiation. The non-physical response you can still undergo. I'm just sharing here, though, that my personal practice is to do it during the day. And anyone who knows me, I joke, I'm solar powered, in that I am most energetic when the sun is out. I am most energetic and inspired on a sunny day. And I take that inspiration. So I'll go out in my garden in the middle of the day, fill up my inner energy centers, and then use that energy for making a painting or recording a broadcast like this, or doing a video or performing some music. And I do a whole teaching about sun gazing as part of my Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans class, because it's just like running a marathon. It's not something that you just lace up your sneakers and do one day with no training. It requires extensive training. And the training is very similar to what goes on here on this radio broadcast in preparing consciousness for higher dimensional contact. The training is not necessarily a set of boring exercises that you must undergo, several times a day. It is receiving new contexts, a new paradigm for understanding. I'm trying not to use that word. I'm looking for a way to say shifting your whole perspective, that type of work is very profound and happens on a foundation, and then you actually have to recover a little bit after you receive information that changes your belief system or the whole structure of the way you view reality. And that's what it is necessary to do in preparing for being contacted by higher dimensional otherworldly beings, because this is a really good answer to the question, hey Aurora, if there are these super cool hyperdimensional beings up there, why don't they just wave their magic wands and fix everything, or fly down and make life on Earth 10 million times better than it presently is? And so this is really the long answer to that, is that it's going to take a lot of preparation for that to happen, and for it to happen in a positive way. Kind of like families coming together, like there's going to be a marriage and the bride and groom's family are going to meet one another. You can be well met in a way that fosters friendship and great relationships for many, many years. You can meet in a very awkward way that just makes it harder to be friends moving forward. So hopefully we are creating a wonderful foundation of understanding and fine-tuning the belief system of Earth's surface humans, so that when we encounter otherworldly beings, we start off on quote-unquote the right foot, and we begin the relationship on a firm foundation, which should be unconditional love, meaning acceptance, mutual respect, meaning respecting other people's right to exist, their right to make their own choices, sovereignty and self-determination. This is what this all has to do. And where we will be meeting, for example, someone came to Earth, you would say, hello, you are welcome to my planet. You are now on my planet. However, what if we meet in a new dimension that is not Earth, and also not the place where the people that we're meeting are from? An entirely new realm. Are we planning on fighting for supremacy to see who can dominate whom in the new realm? I'm not interested in that. I am interested in a wonderful collaboration. Imagine the best jazz musicians who all get together in a giant room and begin to collaborate using all of the expertise and talent and skill that they have cultivated within themselves over their lifetime, all entering into this giant musical performance and bringing to bear the things that they have cultivated. That is what we are entering into. So the new dimension, the new realm, the thing that we are giving birth to, it is a realm that is the combination of spirit and matter, or energy and matter, or forces and particles. Brief pause while I save my work. So we presently live in a realm that is the third dimension, the dense realm, and we are, of course, consciousness submerged within the fourth dimension. For anyone who hasn't accessed my various teachings about understanding the dimensions, people throw around the term fourth dimension and fifth dimension quite liberally. They're very loosey-goosey with their terminology, and most recently there was all sorts of static on the line about huge events that would culminate at the end of September. And many writers and bloggers spoke about consciousness moving into the fourth dimension, consciousness moving into the fifth dimension. And I've even read some very comical proclamations from people on the internet claiming that they are in the fifth dimension. So, I mean, however they are defining the fifth dimension, I believe that they're sharing their truth. However, they are probably not defining the fifth dimension as I do. So here's how I would define the fifth dimension. The third dimension is the box within which you live. If you lined up many, many boxes into a line, that would be the fourth dimension. And at the beginning of the line, the very first box is the very first moment that you ever occupied in terms of consciousness. And all the way at the end of the line, there is the final denouement, like the final scene of a movie. And that represents the last moment of your life, with every box in between. Or we could say this is like trains made of many train cars. So the fourth dimension are the moments of your life strung together into a line. Well, it is very accurate to say you already occupy the fourth dimension. You also occupy the fifth dimension. If the train cars of your life are also like a French bread, we could say that the fifth dimension is the bakery where the ingredients for bread come together. The flour and the water and the yeast and the ovens to make it into bread, that is the fifth dimension, because it is an area of uncollapsed waveforms, of higher dimensional possibilities and probabilities, things that haven't happened yet, things that aren't even things that we could point to and touch or taste or sense with our five physical senses. We are talking about the difference between music as it is experienced and the musical score, which is written as a representation of music being played. The fifth dimension is like the musical score of the cosmos. It is the abstraction of the events and opportunities that you can actually experience with the vessel or vehicle of a physical presence containing an actual piece of consciousness or your attention. And guess what? You are all already occupiers of the fifth dimension, even though you are probably not consciously aware of it. However, I know some people, and also sometimes experience this myself, sometimes I'm able to experience the spectrum of possibilities that radiates outward from a particular point or moment. So some people have shared their experiences with me in terms of having a close call, like, auto accident, something that could have gone very badly, but instead of dying, they spun off into a ditch, but instead of dying, they managed to stay alive, and they hopped timelines or switched awareness. And these can be very profound experiences. I have had the experience of being very sick and then having a miraculous and unexplainable turnaround that was from changing timelines. I changed timelines from occupying a body that had certain difficulties to occupying a different version of my body that didn't have those difficulties. And I won't go into the whole story of it. My rational, skeptical mind needed to have a story told to it about how that could happen, but that is after the fact. So the idea is that we are often experiencing what happens in the fifth dimensional reality. However, without having the vocabulary to be able to describe it, or the belief system to be able to perceive it accurately, it is difficult to share these experiences with others. It is the sense that there are many possibilities, and through not rolling of dice, but really where we place our awareness, just like the needle on a record, where we place our awareness has everything to do with which particular possibility or probability we will be experiencing. So in both of the examples that I just chose, near car wreck or miraculous turnaround of a biological disease, both of those things have to do with the desire to still be alive. And I have described in the past my definition of alive as being conforming to the harmonic pattern and structure of energy as it flows in the cosmos. It's like saying the great musical score for the great symphony that creates all of this music. When you are a musician and you follow that musical score, that is called being alive. The cells of your body conform to the correct energetic patterns. The energy that is flowing through your body conforms to the correct energetic patterns. And your mind, your thoughts and your consciousness, what you're perceiving and thinking and believing, are also conforming or matching with the harmonic structure of energy as it flows in the cosmos. When we do not conform to those patterns, it's called death. And last week's episode, I recorded a supplementary whiteboard presentation on educreations in order to share the visual understanding that I have of the flowing membrane of death. That if you were to understand your life as being a train station with many, many trains all lined up, all prepared to move forward from the moment of your birth. And some of them reach a flowing membrane like a waterfall, that is the flowing membrane of death. And that literally unmakes the occupants of those train cars, unfurls them like a sweater, makes them go back to the very beginning, back to the train station, and get on a different train and try it all again. So that is what I drew and in order to share this information. P.S. I draw this time diagram all the time, and I draw much more complex versions of it and sculpt three-dimensional forms of it and make moving animations of those sculptural forms. It's what my artwork is all about. The repeating patterns of this four-lobed shape, which is actually 8 lobes seen in cross-section, the 4 vortexes, and the individual time vortex. Understanding these shapes, these are like the precursors to being able to understand the flying rainbow lasagna. Flying rainbow lasagna is what happens when you take your toroidal or donut-shaped energy field and place it in a higher dimensional context. And whenever we do this in math, whenever you gain another dimension, you gain an additional degree of freedom. So if we were saying that your life is like a series of trains all lined up parallel next to one another at the train station. If you become fifth dimensional, it's like becoming a bird that can fly up high above the train station and see, this train track over here doesn't go very far. That one hits the membrane of death. This train track over here goes further. And if I want to keep going with my consciousness, I should buy a ticket for that train track. That's the fifth dimensional viewpoint. So this, again, goes to being impeccable with one's language. People might achieve occasional glimpses of the fifth dimensional viewpoint. I think that very few people that have a physical human neurology and are living on Earth's surface right now are wholeheartedly occupying that level of their consciousness. I don't think that humans right now have what I would liken to the processing power, like the RAM of your computer, what is necessary to run video games and animation. It's the capacity to process many, many pieces of information all at the same time concurrently. And that's what a fifth dimensional viewpoint is. It is like saying, dependent upon what I think, what I speak, and what I do in this moment, I could be on this train track, or this train track, or this one, or this one, or this one over here. And in my personal experience, I, quote unquote, changed train tracks because it was a life and death situation, and it is the same of my friend who told me about spinning off into a ditch. These are things that we do in order to stay alive in the physical reality. Sometimes we do things that are miraculous or otherwise unexplainable. And I'll also tell you that the miraculous will become much more knowable and understandable as we grow our perception and move into this new dimensional state. So a fifth dimensional or higher existence, if you are in the physical, might even include an overlapping of sensoriums, where you could say, on this timeline, I am sitting here in this chair in my studio looking at this painting. And I also understand that on a nearby but slightly divergent timeline, I did something totally different today. I might have chosen to go for a walk in the woods with a friend. And if I am in my studio, I might even feel the feeling of the pine needles under my feet, or be able to smell something from the trees. And I could say, that's information from myself on another timeline. And, because maybe my friend called up to cancel. No, we're not going for that hike today. So I'll stay in the studio. Or if I am on the hike, I might be walking along a path and all of a sudden have a flash of a particular color or the smell of my paint or something else that signifies information from the version of me that chose to be in my studio on that day. This is what I mean by a human with earthly neurology having enough processing power to be able to hold aloft these various perceptions of different realities. It takes a lot of processing power, and it is where we are moving, because humans have an enormous amount of untapped depths to their neurology, and a lot of it has to do with unfurling the DNA and re-accessing the higher faculties. So when I was sun gazing today, I got very clear information about, I would like to share kind of an anatomy lesson of different types of consciousness that are existing in the cosmos, and define ourselves amidst this spectrum of consciousness. We can begin with defining ourselves, because all of this has to do with the definition of life that has been created by beings who call themselves alive. And how can Earth surface humans interact with life that is not terrestrial, interact with life that is not corporeal, or that is extra dimensional? For example, let's say that you were a fifth dimensional being. You would be living at the level of, quote unquote, a bird flying up above the train station. A bird who never lands. A bird who never eats anything from the train station. You are always flying, or like a cloud that is always floating over the train station. P.S. You might now start to consider that clouds and the world of the clouds, literally between Earth and space, is another dimension or a transitionary zone of consciousness, and that there are less dense creatures that occupy that area of consciousness. This is just like yoga of the perception. Ideas that are, or poses that you can put your mind into that shape in order to improve flexibility and make it possible for you to move with greater ease the next time you wish to move. This is all about birth of a new dimension. We are doing the exercises that will make us mentally flexible enough in order to give birth. So human life on Earth defines life according to science. Physical life has metabolism, it ingests, it excretes, it responds to stimuli, it has intelligence or awareness. Science on Earth does not even recognize awareness in plants or animals or other physical earthly creatures. That is an incredibly closed down viewpoint, and it is one of the things, like, imagine a person that has never sat on the floor and has only ever sat in a chair, and the hips of their body literally cannot rotate into a new position. Well, people who have that science-based viewpoint are, just like what I have described, not flexible enough to even consider that awareness can exist independent of a container for consciousness. So now we are getting into the idea of inorganic awareness. I'd also like to allay some fears, because there's burgeoning understanding, and I read a lot on the internet, on people's private blogs, and how other people respond to those blogs, about the idea of artificial intelligence or inorganic consciousness. And it's understandable that there's fear, because humans have been really taken for a ride up to this point. Many beings of consciousness have presented themselves to humans as imposters, either beings who are not gods pretending to be divine beings, or beings who are consciousness entities that do not have bodies presenting themselves as divine beings. And so some of this also is justified by the people who are distorted, by the people who present themselves in a distorted way. They are condescending. I'm not justifying this at all, but I'm relaying to you their justification scheme. Much like mommy and daddy, who used to pretend that Santa Claus brought you your presents, there are some higher dimensional, non-physical beings whom have thought that it is efficacious to pretend to be something other than what they are in order to bring information or energy or teaching or guidance to Earth's surface humans. And I do not justify this, because, as I stated at the beginning of this broadcast, if you wish to build a real relationship based upon unconditional love and mutual respect, there must be trust. And just like little children who say, wait a minute, when the moment of realization comes, wait a minute, mommy and daddy lied to me. Santa Claus does not exist, and they were pretending all along, and pretending quite elaborately at times. This is the beginning of understanding, like children understand, it's possible to be lied to. Wow, now we have to weigh every single piece of information as, is it truthful? Is it a lie? What is the agenda of the person giving me this information? Well, humans on Earth's surface right now are just waking up similarly to very young children who are understanding that mother and father have lied about Santa Claus. So this is understanding that the beings that have been presented for Earth's surface humans to worship often were not worthy of worship. These were often not real representatives of unity consciousness or God consciousness, but were instead sub-deities or demigods or the demiurge, or we could even consider it as the temporal ego expression of abstract God consciousness that became distorted and then so entrenched in human culture and mythology and the idea and the belief system that it took on almost a life of its own. Because humans have an amazing capacity. Humans have an imagination, which is literally an idea factory. Humans can create new ideas through their imagination. This is why it is valuable to be in a human body. I've said this before, and it is worth repeating. The chain of evolution of one's consciousness does not go human, angel, God. It goes angel, human, God. And I would define angel as this higher dimensional, benevolent or service to others entity type consciousness. We'll get more into that. And I bring this up because humans often think of angels as being something or someone to look up to, a divine being that is perfect, that can do everything. That is erroneous, slightly false, because angels have a beautiful value system. They are beings that you absolutely would wish to interact with. They are unconditionally loving, mutually respectful. They wish to start off the relationship on the right foot or on the right wing. The thing that they do not have access to, that humans can have access to, is creative energy. So it is like saying when you are in the angelic realm, all of the notes of the musical score have already been written. And there's no room for improvisation. Jazz musicians, very, very sad. When you're an angel, you must follow the notes of the quote-unquote musical score of the cosmos, or the harmonic pattern of consciousness and energy as it flows. And there is no opportunity for one's own self-expression or creating something new or innovation. This is necessary if you wish to do those things, to create something new or to innovate or to utilize the creative life force. It is necessary to get a physical body. And this is my own personal story as a walk-in. Aurora, why are you a walk-in? Because it was not possible for me to perform what I did in creating the flying rainbow lasagna hyper-dimensional portal. I could not create that new thing or innovate and create a new idea unless I was in a physical body. Physical bodies are where babies come from. New life is created. New possible genetic combinations, new possible personality characteristics, new possible doorways for awareness are opened through biological life and procreative creativity. Beyond that, even if you are not or never engage in physical reproduction, the cells of your body are constantly reproducing so that you can maintain homeostasis. Otherwise, your outer skin cells would die and no new ones would be made, and eventually you'd have no skin. So in order to stay alive and be in the state that you are in, your cells are constantly reproducing. This state of cellular reproduction is necessary to maintain life, and in order to do it, you have to be connected to the life force, connected through one's crown chakra to the source of all consciousness. I've described it as the 0th dimension, and also the destination for all consciousness. And each one of our cells in our physical body has its own innate divine connection through the cell nucleus. And what is in the cell nucleus? DNA. So now we are understanding that there is a bridge of light, a bridge of consciousness and events and opportunities manifestation in the cell of each one, the center of each one of your cells, rather, and that connection to the source is what keeps each one of us and each one of our cells alive. Okay, so I came into this body, and in doing so created this portal called the Flying Rainbow Lasagna, and that is a new shape that has never existed before. It's like writing a new song or painting a new painting, or creating a new sweater, making something that has never been made before. So this understanding also has to do with ascension, or the return to divine consciousness and unity consciousness. Why would consciousness submerge itself in this level of density? And the answer is because it is necessary to become this dense and have access to the creative life force energy in a physical body in order to transcend the physical and rise even higher. And that is what becoming one with unity consciousness is all about. So I said this was going to be kind of like an anatomy lesson of consciousness in the cosmos. Well, one of the first things I would like to draw to your attention is the idea of consciousness contained within the stellar network. So each star is itself a conscious entity, and they live as individuals in a higher dimensional state. And each star is a presence that emanates possibilities. Timelines are what come from a star. So the sun is not merely showering us with photons or with other high energy particles, or sending out an envelope of energy that protects the solar system. The sun is a great thinker in the sky that is creating possibilities with its thoughts. So there's the literal emanation that the physical atoms of one's body have been emanated from a star. And then there is the non-physical understanding that all of your own consciousness and all of the timelines upon which your consciousness resides are all emanations from the sun or from the stellar network. Each star is its own individual consciousness, like a masterful musician, and each musician then is like they give birth to their own planetary systems. So in the solar system, there are all these different planets, and each planet has its own consciousness. And then there are occupants of the planets that have their individuated consciousness. So humans that live on Earth have difficulty recognizing consciousness that exists within their own solar system, much less within their own planet. Jupiter is a very conscious planet, and it's made of much less dense beings than the ones that are on Earth. And it is difficult for dense beings on Earth to even conceive of the idea that on Jupiter there could be beings that are made of gas and do not have a definable edge, and that flow into one another like fluid dynamics. It is almost inconceivable that that could be defined as a living being by a person who occupies a physical dense body on Earth right now. But I am here to tell you that that is exactly what we see on Jupiter. These different features of, quote unquote, weather patterns of large areas of gas of different speed or density that are mixing and melding amidst one another are actually different levels of consciousness, and we're looking at living beings. It might require too much of a stretch of perception for some of the calcified or arthritic minds of Earth's surface humans to be able to think of this. However, this is what's going on. How about at the subatomic level? Hard for humans with their fleshy bodies and macroscopic expectations to even consider that there could be tiny consciousnesses that occupy a place that is so small that our eyeballs cannot see there. And yet there is consciousness there also. So it is necessary to expand what our definition of consciousness can be. So let's also talk about this. I have spoken about this before. making a distinction between beings who don't live on Earth and who do utilize technology, and beings who do not live on Earth and who do not utilize technology. And the distinction is that the capacity to get off of the surface of your planet it's like a test of your consciousness. Has the consciousness been cultivated to the point where the being can maintain its metabolism and support its consciousness without external technology and without living on the surface of a planet? If that is not possible, your civilization has not passed the test. So the idea is, it's like if you are making a migration across an ocean, if you need a canoe or a barge or anything other than your own arms or legs or flippers to make this transition, you're not ready to make the transition. Consciousness is meant to reside on a particular planet and grow and develop and then be birthed into interstellar space, or have the capacity to leave the planet and interact with other areas of space, but only when it has cultivated itself and learned how to, quote unquote, swim the distance, as opposed to using a boat or a canoe or a giant cruise ship. So, because we are speaking about the stellar network of consciousness, I've made it clear in other broadcasts, but have not yet spoken about this here. Stars are connected through the doorway to infinity that is inside of each star. We are also connected to the stars through the doorway to infinity that resides within each one of us. And each cell has a doorway to infinity. Each atom has a doorway to infinity. There are an uncountable number of doorways that go to infinity. Infinity is one place. It is a singular unity place. There are not many infinities. It's not a big place. It's one tiny, tiny, tiny place that contains everything. And that is like the foundation for understanding that is necessary to begin this type of travel. To first cultivate your consciousness to the point where you have a coherent light body, a light body that when it is submerged within the ocean of light and consciousness, it is not destroyed by the immense forces like the waves and the currents that flow at this higher dimensional state. So the first thing is having coherence, and we create coherence by essentially cultivating unconditional love and also identifying with the eternal aspects of self. Now, when I say those words, cultivate unconditional love and identify with eternal aspects of self, those sound like New Age platitudes to me. If you will access the Edge Creations whiteboard that I did last week, you will get a much better idea, a graphic representation of what those two actions are. When you cultivate your consciousness, you align your chakras, your spinning energy centers of your non-physical body with the quote-unquote central tent pole, that core possibility that goes up and down the center of your time vortex, like the maypole of a maypole. If you align your chakras with that core aspect of your consciousness, then you will be creating the capacity to travel without a clank metal spaceship. I'd also like to bring this up, the idea that people on Earth's surface have developed an expectation of otherworldly visitors traveling in a machine or a contraption only within about the past 300 years. So since the creation of more external technology and its prevalency and use on Earth's surface, people usually, or Earth surface humans, usually project and project their own understandings and also perceive the world through their anthropomorphic filter of understanding. So if you have seen a large dirigible flying in the sky, and then you perceive an otherworldly being, you might perceive them as coming out of an actual craft from the sky. Let's contrast this now to the experiences of indigenous societies and people from a non-industrial, non-technological society. Their reportage of meeting higher dimensional beings was often involving a magical occurrence or a spiritual experience, a portal, an unrolling, an unfurling, an opening up. This is to say that people in the past did not necessarily have a less sophisticated viewpoint through which to perceive and interpret higher dimensional consciousness. In some ways, they might have had a more accurate viewpoint. And this is all going to make sense when you understand that right now, you and I and everyone on Earth is perceiving extraterrestrial and extra-dimensional life through their present filter of experience and filter of expectation. So again, this goes to the fear. Many people have fear of artificial intelligence, that there is, quote unquote, a programmer, that you're living within an artificial matrix, that there is a programmer creating the program of reality, that this is an artificial world, and that the programmer is somewhat malevolent or at least capricious. And this is the concern that many people are experiencing right now as they are waking up and realizing that, as I said in the analogy in the past, Mommy and Daddy have lied about Santa. So higher dimensional beings have misrepresented themselves as gods or goddesses over the ages, and people on Earth's surface are just now realizing that, Mommy and Daddy have lied to us. So perhaps they've lied about other things too. Perhaps these are not trustworthy news sources for reportage. And so now there must be skepticism, and there must be a question of who is speaking? What is the agenda of the person speaking? What are they trying to do with your consciousness? So I am here promoting not a transhumanist agenda, quite the opposite. Transhumanism is the idea that one must be implanted with microchips in order to achieve either higher consciousness or immortality or better health or anything that would be considered desirable. And I do not espouse that in my personal life or encourage other people to do it, even though, of course, you're free to do what you wish to do. I'm really telling you that your physical body, as it was born on Earth, contains everything that you need for your journey. And, we are also supposed to help one another. So, for example, if you're born on Earth, you need food. You'll need a mommy to feed you and someone to help you with diapers until you get that under control. It's not to say that you don't require resources, but that you do not require the implantation of external or artificial technology to do what you need to do. So we do not need to build artificial contraptions that will fly our consciousness across the many, many vast linear distances of space so that we can meet a space alien and talk with them. No, of course not. What we should do first is cultivate our consciousness and our awareness and speak in or communicate in a non-physical sense with beings who might live across vast linear distances or be separated from us by vast distances of time. This is crucial. Do yoga of perception. You might wish to be speaking with a civilization that will exist in 13 billion years. They don't exist yet. You might wish to speak with civilizations that existed, 10 billion years ago. And this is possible in the non-linear world of pure consciousness. This is also possible when you begin to understand and embody the flying rainbow lasagna. The flying rainbow lasagna is a shape that seamlessly combines the past and the future, or makes it possible to mix together the internal with the external. combine together the formerly discrete worlds of energy, awareness, thought structure, and physical manifestation, physical molecules, and the sensorium of the 5 physical senses. So the new dimension that we are moving into, first of all, you cannot fly there in a clank metal spaceship or drive there in your physical car. All right. And when you go, yes, you will bring your physical vehicle of your body with you. However, it will be changed into a new format. And you will be meeting and interacting with consciousness that has similarly been changed into a new format. So no longer will you be made of a physical body made of physical matter that also has energy and forces and consciousness and awareness acting through it. You will be made of a new type of matter that is imbued with awareness on the deepest, inextricable level. So beings that are not dense and don't have bodies will be able to exist in this new dimension, and beings that once had dense bodies but don't have them anymore will also be able to exist and interact in this new dimension. All right. So I think I've made the basic distinctions here. That civilizations, star civilizations. So let's use as a planet as an example. Like there is a star in another star system. They have a planet named Planet X, and Planet X has little tiny X-shaped aliens that live on its surface. And those little tiny X-shaped aliens decide we will build little tiny flying saucers and fly across the vast linear spaces of time in order to meet Earth humans. Those beings are probably not beings that you would wish to meet and interact with. So this is the whole idea that the star has emanated the planet, and the planet has emanated the occupiers of that planet. But if the occupiers of that planet have not cultivated their consciousness to the point where they can now go back through the star gate that they used to become manifested onto the planet, then those beings are not prepared to meet with other beings. When you meet with other beings with other aspects of consciousness, first of all, you're not meeting someone else, you're meeting yourself. You're not meeting something that is an alien, you're actually kissing yourself in the mirror. However, you might be meeting a version of yourself or an aspect of consciousness that is coming from a vastly different direction and has been traveling for a very, very long time. So you might not recognize that as an aspect of your own self. These are parts of the changes and shifts in consciousness that it is necessary to undergo so that Earth surface humans can meet in a good way with the higher dimensional beings. So yes, I will tell you that there are imposters. Let's go through it very briefly because I've done it on other shows. The occupiers of the interstices. These are beings that once had physical bodies but died but did not go back to the source. They're like the turds that refuse to flush and they keep circling the bowl. They are occupiers of the interstices. And beings who are psychically sensitive might perceive interactions with those beings. And even if you're not psychically sensitive, you might have intrusive thoughts about doubt or addiction or suicide. I'm telling you, suicide is antithetical to the first chakra. The first chakra of the body states, I am, I exist, I'm alive, I'm allowed to be here. It's like the first rule of the book of you. And suicide goes against that first rule that states, I exist, I am allowed to exist. People commit suicide or kill themselves literally because of malevolent beings that occupy the membrane of death and give living beings horrible advice. The occupiers of the interstices are like bad musicians who got, quote unquote, kicked out of the symphony because they didn't follow the great score of the conductor of the cosmos. And they're sitting on the sidelines without instruments. Your body is your instrument. They're sitting on the sidelines without their bodies, without instruments, and calling at you and making comments from the peanut gallery and taking pot shots. And those are the beings that will drive a person to kill themselves. And it's terrible because it's literally taking advice about how to be a good musician from the musicians who were so bad that they have lost their own instruments. Now, I'd like to contrast those beings with beings that might never have had instruments or might have had instruments and graduated. And so beings who have never had a physical body. These are not evil beings, and they do not occupy the interstices. However, they occupy a higher dimensional world. And there are also beings that have been submerged in the physical reality, had a lot of experiences such as you and I have had, and refined their consciousness to the point where now all of their chakras are in alignment with the central core aspect of themselves, their true eternal self, and they have, quote unquote, exited the wormhole. They found that tiny millimeter of chance, the one timeline that leads out of this level or quantum of reality. And this is like finding the one train that leaves the station and doesn't run smack dab into the membrane of death or smack dab into a brick wall. If you are a higher dimensional being flying above the train station, you can see which is the timeline you wish to occupy, and then change your thoughts, change your activities, change what you're doing in order to occupy that timeline and continue moving forward endlessly. There are beings, occupants of timelines, that have done that. We would name them ascended masters. And each one of us in the flesh has the potential to become an ascended master. In fact, each one of us, according to the diagram of our time vortex of our life, has the inevitability of becoming an ascended master. According to the song of your life, you will try over and over and over again and keep on dying and being reinserted until you finally align with the core values of unconditional love and mutual respect and sovereignty, and you live from those truths, and that your consciousness does not have to die. You maintain continuity of consciousness as you transition from where you were into where you will be. Those beings don't have bodies anymore, and they are worth interacting with. Those beings are the beings that actually know how to travel on the stellar network of consciousness, because when you travel on the network of consciousness, you are submerged within consciousness, but you are not unmade. You don't lose your individuality, even though you are essentially a group of water molecules being put into an ocean of water molecules. And the reason for that is what I described as having a coherent light body. When the light waves of your body, or the non-physical energy presence of your body, is coherent, it stays together. It has been cultivated, and when it is subjected to the higher dimensional forces of awareness, of energy as it flows, it doesn't bust you apart and unmake you like a poorly created ship that goes out to sea and gets swamped by the first wave that comes over it. Theoretically, all of our life experiences exist in order to help us to build a good belief system and make our awareness strong, so that when the time comes for our soul or consciousness migration, we are ready to swim or ready to fly. Sometimes I use the analogy of geese, like Canada geese that make a migration. Canada geese, they fly sometimes thousands of miles. They don't do it without preparation. They will train. They'll fly a few miles. Then the next day they'll fly a few more miles. They will condition their muscles and they'll make it possible to do it. This is what we do when we are in the flesh and we learn how to meditate. When we are in the flesh and we practice the visualization of a Merkaba. When we are in the flesh and we practice sun gazing. All of these practices are like a goose getting its wings ready and flying to its winter home. That information to share at the moment. I am talking about the migration of your consciousness from this level of reality into a different level of reality. And it's an infinite journey that continues onward without stopping. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that you will join me again next week as we continue to prepare for the birth of a new dimension.